Hmm. You know, there's something special about today, and I just can't put my finger on it. You know, and I can't get this number 9 out of my head. I just keep thinking 9. 999. Strange. What's going on, guys? PC here, and welcome to my Dreamcast 14th anniversary special. So, as most of you know, today is the 14th anniversary of the Dreamcast release in North America, and in the coming months you'll also have the 14th anniversary of its release in Europe, as well as its 15th anniversary of its release in Japan. So it's a big year for the Dreamcast, and I wanted to do something really special this year. So what I decided to do was go around YouTube, find some Dreamcast fans, and interview them and have them tell you their memories of the Dreamcast, its launch, and any memories they may have of this great system. So before we get into the actual questions, I'm just going to have them introduce themselves, so here we go.
Hey guys, this is Farmhouse the Adequate Gamer. I run Farmhouse Media 3000, which is my YouTube channel where I basically just speak my mind about video games. I am neither good or bad. I consider myself to be just adequate. I am the average video gamer. And this is my Sega Dreamcast.
My name is Vampire Mike. I run a small website called SegaCDUniverse.com since 2001. My primary focus for the past year or so, though, has been my YouTube channel, Sega CD Universe.
Hello, my name's Mark.
And my name's Jamie, and we are The Game Shed.
The Game Shed.
That's
yes. Right. And we love retro gaming and modern gaming and any type of gaming.
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube by going to The Games Shed or TGS Next Gen.
Yeah. There are two channels.
Two channels,
yes.
One for old, one for new stuff.
Yes, exactly.
We're a couple of London boys who love gaming.
Hi everyone, I'm Ultra Pro, and my YouTube channel is called Ultra Pro's Retro Video Game World. It's basically just a haven for all things, you know, old school, Dreamcast, Saturn, anything Sega really, a couple other things. Just basically loads and loads of retro madness and fun and frolics. Check it out, there'll be a link in the description.
Hi, my name's Adam Korlick, and I have a channel named Adam Korlick, and it's got a lot of video game videos, including a lot on the Sega Dreamcast.
You got time to do an interview?
It's an interview?
Yeah, about the Dreamcast.
Oh my god, I'm no good with interviews, come on.
It's about the Dreamcast. Come on.
Fine. If it's about the Dreamcast, then I'll do it. My name is Razor, and my YouTube channel is known as The Retro Game Shelf. It's youtube.com/Warrior Razor. I also have a website, www.retrogameshelf.com, where I upload all of my videos, I do reviews, and I print out cover art for games. Dreamcast related.
Hello there, I'm Aaron, otherwise known as the Gagger Man. I have my personal channel, which is just Gagger Man. I have Dreamcast Junkyards, which pretty relevant, I should think. And I also have a little collaboration channel that I do with a few friends called Lucky Hit Series. I'm just pointing towards where all the buttons PC Wizard might put there. If you haven't got them there, I'm gonna look a bit daft.
Alright, I'm Tommy Pope, or Murray Curry from Lucky Hit.
Howdy, hey there, and hello. My name is Montez McCrary, the Practitioner, and my YouTube channel is, well, The Practitioner. My website is thepractitioner.com, and you can find me on a variety of other social networks and all that other stuff. Again, you go to the YouTube page, you go to the website, all that stuff will be available to you. I guess you can say I'm properly dressed for the occasion, but something's missing. There it is.
Hi, I'm player 1. You know, I'm player 2. What are you doing? What do you mean? We're here to film a video. We're the Cartridge Bros, and on our YouTube channel we do game reviews and some discussion. And today we're here to talk about the Dreamcast. Nice shirt.
So as you can see, we have a great lineup of YouTubers to interview, and I'm just going to ask them a series of questions about the Dreamcast and their memories of this fantastic system, and see what their thoughts are. So the first question I have is, what memories do you have of the Dreamcast launch? Did you buy one on launch day, Or if you bought one at a later date, what memories do you have of the day you bought your first Dreamcast?
The Dreamcast launch, yeah, I remember that really well. 9/9/99, I think we all kind of remember that date. That was a big day. That was like the first console launch that ever kind of mattered to me. It was, you know, the first one I ever paid attention to. And because Sega did such an amazing job of prepping us for that. And I remember that specific day it was in school, which was the longest and most horrible day of school ever because it just would not end. And as soon as it was over, you know, I got home. I was like, all right, Mom, we're going to the store. Went over to KB Toys, buy KB Toys, and we picked up the console that I had pre-ordered. Got, I believe Sonic Adventure was the only game I bought with it, and came home and just played the living crap out of that game.
I didn't get a Dreamcast on the launch, which I believe in the UK was around mid-October. I did get one about a month later, at the end of November for my birthday though, which was cool. I remember getting memory cards, 2 controllers, I believe I had Sonic Adventure and Adventure Fighter 3DB, and I just remember absolutely just playing Sonic Adventure non-stop for ages, for a long, long time. I absolutely loved that game the first, couple of months of the system's release.
Well, sadly for me, I didn't get my Dreamcast until very late into its lifespan. In fact, I think at the end of the Dreamcast lifespan. My memories of first playing it were just the joy of being able to finally sit at home and play through Shenmue properly on my own, watching it.
I bought the Dreamcast on launch. Memories I've got of the Dreamcast launch are just the over excitement of the whole thing, because I was a massive Sega nerd and I knew it was coming, and I pre-ordered it, and I pre-ordered a couple of games, and for me it was the greatest moment of my teenage years, because I'd never got a console on release before, so I was just ridiculously excited. I can remember being in the store on release day, queuing for quite a long time. I didn't have my own colour TV in my bedroom at the time. I got one quite soon after that, because this was '99 and I was just starting to work in Sainsbury's in Watford. My fondest memories of it are setting it up in the living room when I got home. Mum and Dad went out for the day. I think they kind of knew that I was going to be playing on the Dreamcast. They were like, yeah, we're going to go out, you crack on and enjoy that. It was the first major thing that I'd ever really bought myself. And yeah, I just remember buying it and coming out of the store with it in a bag and just being completely over the moon.
What do I remember about the Dreamcast launch? Well, I remember 2 things: the system itself being available in stores, and quite possibly the greatest edition of the MTV VMAs, hosted by Chris Rock, which also used the marketing term 99.99. But I did not get a Dreamcast at launch, because at that point I was kind of done with Sega systems. I got kind of burnt by the Saturn and all the Genesis add-ons. And I wasn't really a huge Sega fanboy. I was really more of a Sonic fanboy, in case you can't tell. I eventually did get a Dreamcast from a pawn shop for about $20 that came with a controller, all the cords and wires, and a VMU unit. And that's when I started collecting Dreamcast stuff. Actually, that's when I started collecting retro game stuff around 2007, when I started graduate school.
Our memories of launch day of this unit. Oh, do you remember?
Man, I queued up. I queued up for like, I think it was about 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah, it was something phenomenal. I remember I remember speaking to you the night before. We were dead excited. Yeah. So we went down there. We took a little kind of sleeping bag, Oxford Circus, Electronics Boutique. Do you remember getting inside, bursting inside, getting a goodie bag of
running to buy one,
and then bang, purchase.
Yep.
Amazing.
All
for this. It was so good.
Wow. Have we?
Oh. It's not this, is it?
Wait, is this? Are we?
No.
Doing this for the right person? Is this for?
I think.
Oh, this is
got it twisted.
PC Wizard, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Dreamcast. Oh, Dreamcastic channel.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
He's got too many names.
He's talking about this.
Oh, this one. Yeah, I queued.
No, didn't queue.
Didn't queue for this. I didn't even
buy sleeping bags.
No. To be fair, I got this not too long ago.
Would you say 5 years?
About 5 years ago, yeah.
I mean, back then, I remember playing them 14 years ago when it come out, but I never had one because I was skinned.
And I never had one because I was out all the time. I was working as a sort of 18-year-old and didn't really have time for gaming.
But there you go. We love the Dreamcast.
Dreamcast, love it.
So we don't remember launch day.
No, I really couldn't tell you.
No.
My first real memories of this was my football team, Arsenal Football Club in London, was sponsored by Dreamcast, not sponsored by Sega, sponsored by Dreamcast. So on the shirt said Dreamcast. And although very passionate footballing fan at the time, it still wasn't enough to make me go out and buy one of these.
Well, quite a very passionate footballer, were you?
No, I've never been a passionate footballer ever. That's a lie.
No. My first memories were a friend of mine called Joel. He bought a Dreamcast, and I remember going around to his and playing it a lot. Yeah, those were the days when you'd go around to a mate's house and
just to
go,
play video games.
Yeah, I'll come round and see you, and it wasn't to go
No.
Joel, I'm sorry. You probably did it to me as well with my N64, but
I used to go around to yours just for your N64.
Yeah, exactly. But so I remember going around to his and playing that. Loved it, absolutely loved it.
Sadly, I don't really have any memories in terms of the Dreamcast launch. I do remember it coming out, but I never picked one up right away. I had friends down the block who had them, and I would go to their house and play it all the time. I thought the graphics were phenomenal. I thought it had some really interesting ideas, and I really liked the VMUs. I thought it was interesting that you were able to play these kind of mini games on the memory units and then transfer things between them. I also remember playing Power Stone with my friends in games like Dynamite Cop and Zombies Revenge, and I just thought the arcade games and the different titles were amazing. I couldn't believe how much fun we were having multiplayer-wise. I eventually purchased a Dreamcast a few years after it had died. I believe the PS2 was out at this point, and there was a local video shop down the block that used to sell used games and used systems that they would rent out. I went there one day and I happened to notice they had a Dreamcast for I think it was $39.99. I believe it came with 2 controllers and a game, but I don't really remember. That day that I ended up picking up the system, it was either really cold out or snowing, I don't recall which, but I just remember walking home with this shit-eating grin on my face with this box, this cardboard box for miles with this Dreamcast and in this kind of plain box, and it was freezing out. I remember thinking to myself, this is really going to be worth it once I walk these few miles back home.
So we'd always been a Nintendo family, and then when the PlayStation came out, they sort of became our adopted siblings. We started getting those as well. So when the Dreamcast was launched, it wasn't something our parents even thought of getting.
No, so we had a Genesis at the time, but it wasn't called very late in the game, so we never really were a Sega fan. It wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I looked at my first Dreamcast. I actually found it on the GG bundle with a lot of the staple games, like Shenmue, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Crazy Taxi, Code Veronica was in there, so I couldn't refuse.
And myself, we did a video there a little while ago, about a month ago now. It was a pickup that we had managed to find. It was a great deal, and I managed to get 2 Dreamcasts in that deal, and I've been playing his games that he had since.
Now this is going to sound a bit bad for me to be in a Dreamcast video and not have bought the Dreamcast on its launch day. I didn't own Dreamcast when it was like relevant. When this little grey box was a console to have, I didn't own one. I owned a PlayStation 1, and then after this thing got discontinued, I owned a PlayStation 2. I was fortunate enough to try out the Dreamcast, and I remember playing Daytona USA, and I remember it being like perfect to the arcades, if not better than the arcades, because the Daytona USA port to Dreamcast better than the arcades. That's my memories of the Dreamcast when it was relevant.
Sega Dreamcast, man, what a great system. And I remember when it was first coming out, that launch campaign that they did, that ad that they did, it was coming out 9/9/99, September 9th, 1999, and wow. I remember it came out and I didn't get one. I was actually not really into console video gaming then. I'd done my NES, Super Nintendo, N64, but I was kind of on a bit of a lull. I got myself my first real PC, and I was doing a lot of PC gaming, and it was just I found it to be kind of expensive at the time, and it wasn't because I was getting a PlayStation 2, because I never actually owned a PlayStation 2 either. And what I ended up doing was buying it when it was towards the end of the console's life cycle, when all these great games were out, but they were actually down in price. In fact, the console itself, if you can believe it or not, that came out $999, I actually bought for 99 bucks. So I've got the full $99.99 experience. So, but wow, it's just such a great system, and just such a ton of great games for it.
So my next question is, why did you buy a Dreamcast in the first place? Was it a particular game that you wanted to play, or was it maybe one of the unique and innovative features that the Dreamcast had, such as the built-in modem or the VMU, or maybe you were just a Sega fanboy that would buy anything with a Sega logo on it?
I've always been a Sega fanboy. I've loved the Sega Genesis and Sega CD since I was a kid, and I'm not sure why I didn't buy the Dreamcast initially on launch. I guess back then, you know, you're younger, you don't really have as much access to money, so you try to wait and see when things come out how they are, that type of thing. After seeing all the games and playing all the fun multiplayer titles at Friends though, I was just very taken aback by it. Some of my favorite games are on the Dreamcast, and I think till this day the Dreamcast really holds up as a quality system.
Why did you buy a Dreamcast? That's a question. Why did I buy a Dreamcast? That's a question. Okay, I bought the Dreamcast. It's Sega's last hurrah in the hardware business. I mean, this thing, it's so hard to describe like what this thing means to retro gamers and Sega fans. We want another Sega console, but this is the last console they made, and that's why I bought it. It's the last console Sega made, and I love Sega, and I had to own one of these, so I bought one. Two, in fact. That's why I own a Dreamcast, and it has a great library of games.
I got the console because growing up, I grew up on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, but I was more of a Genesis fan, and Sega had kind of vanished to me. You know, like later I got an N64 and I got a PlayStation. I had missed the Saturn, like most people. I did not have a 32X. I didn't have a Sega CD. All of those consoles didn't like exist to me. I just never knew about them because my friends didn't have them, and if your friends don't have them when you're that age, you don't know about them really. Remember, this predates the internet. So I saw in a gaming magazine the Dreamcast was coming up, and I was like, Sega's coming back? And they just showed like all these awesome screenshots and everything of all these games, in particular Sonic Adventure, and I was just like, I have to get this thing. I want to relive how awesome the Genesis was, but even better. And of course it was. The Dreamcast was amazing.
The main reasons why I bought the Dreamcast in the first place are because I am a massive Sega fan. I had the Master System, the Mega Drive, Mega CD, Saturn, and I'd always been late with those consoles. I'd always missed the window that they were actually out. I'd never got anything on release, so I was determined that the Dreamcast would be my first console that I bought on release. And I was a massive Sega nut, and I just wanted to get it. I mean, there were obviously other reasons why I wanted to get it. It was going to be online. The graphics looked ridiculous. I mean, we'd seen pictures of Sonic Adventure, D2, Soul Calibur, and it just looked astoundingly good. The fact that it was going to be online, but other than all those reasons aside, I was just a massive Sega fanboy. I'd never touched a Nintendo, never wanted to, so at the time it was all Sega for me, and it just had to be the Dreamcast. And I made a big song and dance of it at college with all my friends, trying to get other people to get interested in it as well.
Now, I bought my Dreamcast because I had started collecting retro game systems when I started graduate school in 2007. And I bought it because, well, the pawn shop had it, it was available, and I wanted to start getting a pseudo collection of games that I started to do some research on over the past few years. But honestly, the game I kind of really wanted to play was Shenmue, because I already had Shenmue 2 on the Xbox, and it came with Shenmue the movie, that DVD movie, but no, I never even watched it. I really just wanted to play the game, and I already played Sonic Adventure, Virtua Tennis, and Jet Grind Radio on a buddy of mine's Dreamcast.
Well, all of the above really. The main game I was excited for, even a year before it came out of here, was Sonic Adventure, because they revealed it in the Sega Saturn magazine when it was on its last legs. Here's the cover. Sonic Adventure when it was revealed in '98, so there you go. I was excited for that for a solid year, so I definitely had to get a Dreamcast for that. And it was also, the Dreamcast was also my first home internet, because I didn't have a PC at the time until about a couple of years later. So yeah, the Dreamcast was actually my first access to the internet at home in a way. So that's telling you how far back this was. I'm also maybe just a bit of a Sega fanboy. Just maybe.
Well, for me, it would have to be because I was a Sega fanboy. I grew up with the Master System and the Mega Drive, sadly skipped the Sega Saturn, and I saw this shiny new console and what they were doing with one of my favourite series, and I just had to have it.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because of the arcade conversions. Now, Mark and I, we've got a lot of history in arcades.
Yeah.
Especially...
I'm just going to hold this up, sorry. It's just another
one of our favourite peripherals.
Yeah.
Especially Sega arcades, which we played quite a lot. Personally, we used to go down to Oxford Street and play a hell of a lot of House of the Dead 2.
Yes.
And to get a perfect conversion on a home console was everything. It meant everything.
Let's
just dump this back here.
It meant so much. It was such
an important moment.
House of the Dead 2. What a game.
And I believe these nice big clicks.
Look at that.
Beautiful. So this is why we initially got the Dreamcast, just for this game. So important. Also, there was one other arcade game which brought back loads of memories, which was 18-wheeler.
Oh, what a game.
What a game. Do you remember where we played this?
Ridiculous.
Do you remember where we played this?
Yeah.
In Ibiza. In an arcade in Ibiza when we went on holiday. As mere youths.
Mere youths, little boys.
Little boys. So
to see those games on a home console and the conversions were spotless.
Yeah, literally.
They're
bang
brilliant.
on.
So the Dreamcast smashed it.
Yeah, so that is why we got it for 18-wheeler and for House of the Dead 2, especially.
So as I said earlier, when I found that bundle deal, I really couldn't refuse. And there was a lot of games on the system that I was actually looking forward to getting, most importantly being a little RPG known as Skies of Arcadia. That was the real reason I wanted the Dreamcast for years now. So when I had the opportunity to then go and get it, it was the first game I went out and bought after having the Dreamcast. And it wasn't until after that that I discovered so many other hidden gems that are already on it.
Yeah, the Dreamcast really is like an entire system of hidden gems.
It really is.
And now the third question I have is, what were some of the first games you played on the Dreamcast, and out of those games, which ones were your favorite?
So the first time I played Sega Dreamcast was actually at a friend of a friend's place. And it was kind of weird and creepy being at this dude's house. I didn't even know, but he had a Sega Dreamcast. And I remember keeping my eye on that thing because it was so sleek and so awesome. And he's like, "You want to see it?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude." I'm like, "Show me some games." I'm like, "Show me that one." He had a ton of games for this thing. I'm like, "Show me this one, show me that one, let me try this one, let me try that one." So I can't actually remember what my first Dreamcast experience was, gaming-wise, but I can tell you the games that I've played like non-stop since. And some of the games that stand out in my mind are Looney Tunes Space Race, Spawn, Heavy Metal was a great game, a great tennis game, Sega Sports Tennis 2K2, fantastic game. Army Men, Sarge's Heroes, Expendables. One game in particular that, as far as I know, is a Dreamcast exclusive, and I love this game. And I know a lot of you are probably expecting me to say Shenmue, Power Stone 2, all great games, but no, I'm talking about Sword of the Berserk. It was just such a crazy game, very dark game, where you had this ginormous sword, man. It was huge, but just the characters in it and the story in it were just so weird, but so enthralling. It was just such a great game to play.
The very first game I remember playing on Dreamcast was actually Virtua Tennis, and I played it around the summer after Dreamcast came out because I was a counselor at a summer camp at my Matnet High School, and my buddy Alex Kool-Aid Ansel, who's a comedian, he has a YouTube channel, he brought his to the counselor's lounge, which is one of the classrooms, and we just played Virtua Tennis constantly during our breaks from watching the Freshmen, and that was a lot of fun. And later on, we play games like I said earlier, you know, Jet Grind Radio, man, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Oh my goodness, the 2K sports games. But I think of all of them, my favorite one to play out of all of them was definitely Virtua Tennis. It was just a lot of fun. It was arcadey, but it required just the amount of skill of you had to be where you had to be, and you had to hit the ball at a particular time. So it was arcadey, but it was pretty strategic, and that's what I really liked about Virtual Tennis on the Dreamcast.
Some of my favorite Dreamcast titles are Seaman, which you use a microphone and speak into the game, and the game interacts with you, which for its time was pretty revolutionary. I always really loved Phantasy Star Online, both versions 1 and 2. It's really what got me into the internet kind of gaming scene after playing on the PC for a few years. All the amazing arcade titles like House of the Dead 2, Dynamite Cop, Zombies Revenge, Soul Calibur, it just has some great arcade ports. Really strange stuff that came out only in Japan, like Sega Gaga. And how could you forget all the excellent fighting games that came out on the Dreamcast, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, this is the Japanese version, Capcom vs. SNK 2, which eventually got ported over to the Xbox, and then these amazing games, Project Justice, Omicron the Nomad Soul, which is one of my favorite games of all time, Fire Pro Wrestling D, which is my favorite wrestling game of all time, and the Shenmue series, which, keep your fingers crossed, hopefully gets a third one.
I got a bunch of games when it came out. First, my actual 2 pre-order titles I got on release were Sonic Adventure and Blue Stinger. Sonic Adventure was a complete departure for Sonic series because it was really awesome 3D, and it was like almost like an open world game. You could go to different places, do different missions. You could repeat missions if you wanted at any point, just to go back over them and do better. Blue Stinger was just a fantastic, unusual, bizarre survival horror game in the vein of Resident Evil, but it was very off the wall. It was very strange. You killed these zombies and they dropped coins. They dropped gold coins, which you went into the shop and spent on new weapons out of vending machines, no less. And I'll just never forget that music that was in the shop. It was ridiculous. But those are some of the early games that I bought on it. Obviously other games are like Soul Calibur, Shenmue, Skies of Arcadia, Phantasy Star Online. If I had to say which was my favourite game of all time on the Dreamcast, it would have to be a joint win between Shenmue 2 and Phantasy Star Online version 2. I spent the most time on both of them, completed them both, and they just really highlight the whole reason why the Dreamcast was so fantastic. It took risks, it made amazing games, it was all about the fun, it was all about the online, and it was just all about, fantastic games and fantastic graphics for its day. I mean, no console at the time was as good as the Dreamcast graphically, or even came close.
What were the first games played on the Dreamcast when we got it? So,
what did you...
Right,
this is me.
I first played, I like my shooters, so I first played Confidential Mission.
Yep.
We have got some gameplay footage of this on our channel. I love it. I think it's another wonderful Sega shooter.
Yeah.
I also played 18 Wheeler, obviously, and House of the Dead 2.
Yeah.
Perfect. Love them.
Well, some of my first memories were MSR, because I seem to remember that coming with it. Am I wrong?
I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
It was one of the. It was one of the first games I remember playing. Absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely.
Car driving racing game. Graphically amazing. Like at the time, I just remember playing it and like, wow, this is just mind blowing. Choo Choo Rocket, which Jamie absolutely hates.
Hate it.
I just remember playing it and being a bit confused. Cat Mania and all that. It's mental. But that was an early one. And finally, I remember playing Soul Calibur. Look at that.
Soul Calibur. These CD cases, they're not as
not
robust as they are now.
14 years. Soul Calibur, what a beautiful game.
What are some of the first games that I played on the Dreamcast? Well, like I stated earlier, my first game was Daytona USA. And that game is incredible. Now, as for favourite game on the Dreamcast, that is a tricky question. But if I had to pick a favourite, then I'm going to have to go over here and grab Shenmue. This is my favourite game on the Dreamcast. I mean, I'm not a fan of role-playing games, but I'm a fan of Shenmue. Who isn't? Shenmue.
Early games. Sonic Adventure, I got right away, played that a lot. NBA Showtime on NBC. I realize that's a bit of a surprise one, but yeah, I played this a lot. Crazy Taxi, I played a lot early on. Power Stone. Power Stone was great, and I got that not at launch, even though it was a launch title, but I got it like a few months later, and I had a lot of fun playing that. A lot of my friends did. Every one of my friends who had a Dreamcast had Power Stone, so that's probably why I got into it. Didn't play Shenmue right away. I did buy it relatively early on, but never really got around to playing it until after the console was no longer relevant. And unfortunately, that's really all the games I did play when it was relevant. I mean, occasionally I would rent stuff from like Blockbuster or whatever, but you know, those were the ones that kind of defined the relevant years of the Sega Dreamcast.
When I got my Dreamcast, the first thing I did was ask Player 2 to borrow his copy of Skies of Arcadia. I'm a big RPG fan, so I knew that was one that I had to play. You can't really call yourself an RPG fan if you haven't played Skies of Arcadia. So that was the first game I played, and I really enjoyed it.
It's a good game. I remember back in the day when it first launched, maybe a couple years after it launched, playing it at a friend's house. We played a lot of Crazy Taxi. That was the first game I ever played on it. And we also played a lot of Power Stone. And if you've never played it, it's kind of like Sega's answer to Smash Bros. Because it's just a brawl-style fighting game. It's actually really fun in a party setting. It wasn't until years later, because there was a large gap there where I wasn't playing any Dreamcast, that I finally got my hands on my own, and I was able to try out Sonic Adventures 1 and 2. So those are my first real concrete memories of Dreamcast.
The first games I played were obviously Sonic Adventure, and I also had Virtua Fighter 3 TB with my first system, which I actually didn't think was all that impressive compared to, say, Virtua Fighter 2 on the Saturn for some reason. So I ended up trading that one in, but I kind of regret what I traded it in for, because I was a big South Park fan at the time. I traded it in for Chef's Love Shack, which was just a bunch of little mini games and a quiz thing. It was amusing for about 20 minutes. It was a bit dire. I also played at the time, or there was a demo disc with the system as well, and I remember buying Ready to Rumble, and I think I rented Trick Style. I think out of the first couple months of playing the Dreamcast, at least until around January when I got my hands on Soul Calibur, which ended up being one of my favourite games on the entire system. Up until then, Sonic Adventure was by far and beyond my favourite game on the system, but then Soul Calibur came along and just sort of blew it out of the water, really. I was playing that for probably the next year, amongst other things, of course.
Well, first game I played on it, the reason I wanted it in the first place was Sonic Adventure. I mean, watching the opening movie just had me in awe of what I saw, what was going on. The gameplay was wonderful. It's a game I still enjoy to this day. Other than that, other memories of games I first played on the Dreamcast were things like Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive 2, and eventually Shenmue.
So the fourth question I have is, how well do you think the Dreamcast has stood the test of time? Do you think the games are just as fun to play today as they were 14 or 15 years ago? And what are some of your favorite games to play today?
I really think the Dreamcast itself kind of stood the test of time because, well, its advantage was that it was essentially, you know, ahead of its time. You know, when the consumer electronics are released, or practically anything's released, you know, it can be made just for that time. And it runs the risk of becoming obsolete due to more future advancements in technology or just in consumer products. But really, the Dreamcast is not quite in that category. The Dreamcast was kind of ahead of its time, which sometimes that's also a bit of an issue. Unfortunately, not a lot of people had a lot of trust in Sega consoles because they'd been burned, like I was, from all the add-ons and the lack of support for the systems and all that other stuff. And there's that saying that time will be good to such and such. Time will be good to that series. Time will be good to that movie. And I believe that's the same case with the Dreamcast. Time really helped the Dreamcast. And I think that is a huge reason why I think it stands the test of time. I have just as much fun playing my own Dreamcast now as I did playing Kool-Aids back in 2000. And some of my favorite games to still play today are, you know, Shenmue, Virtua Tennis, Sonic Adventure, Jet Grind Radio, and Dynamite Cop.
Has the Dreamcast stood the test of time? I think the answer is an obvious yes, because if it hadn't, we wouldn't be making a video about it, would we? We don't do this for the Atari Jaguar. There aren't any other consoles I can think of where every year an entire community gets together to celebrate its launch as its birthday, as if it's a person. I mean, really, can you think of any other one? What other console is entirely now financed and funded and supported entirely by its fan base, even after its creator is long since gone? Namely, what I'm saying is independent titles like Gunlord here, things like Stormwind, Dux 1.5, Pure Solar, which is coming up. There's not too many other consoles that get independent releases well after the console's dead. I think we will understand down the road, in who knows how many years, that gaming definitely changed as soon as the Dreamcast and Sega pulled out of things. I think we'll understand that it diverged into a direction that it's hard to say yet if that was a good or bad direction. Personally, I don't really like where gaming is going, but others may, so what have you. The answer is yes. I think that the Dreamcast has stood the test of time and will continue to because of a plethora of great games on it, including of course Shenmue 1 and 2, and the continued fan support by people like myself, people like PC Wizard 13 for making this video. I assume you're either going by that or Dreamcastic channel on this one. Jonathan, you're a supporter. And anybody who would watch this video, you guys are all awesome.
How well do we think the Dreamcast has stood the test of time? Well, personally, I think there's a lot of love for the Dreamcast. There's, you know, a lot of people still talking about it. I think it stood the test of time very well, and it is perfect arcade conversion. It shows just what we had when we were younger.
And I think the accessories for the Dreamcast have massively stood the test of time because they're built so well.
They really
These
are.
guns are brilliant, and they're just so sturdy. The keyboard, fantastic. You know, there's so many more accessories that you can get for the Dreamcast that still play so well today. It's definitely stood the test of time because it still plays so well. Let's think of games-wise, like Virtua Tennis plays beautifully. There's no two ways about it.
What games do we play these days still? Still play 18-wheeler, still play House of Dead, still play Typing of the Dead.
Yeah. There's a bunch.
There's a whole bunch of games we still love.
Yeah. Football games.
Crazy Taxi.
Brilliant. Yeah, of course.
Crazy Taxi.
You cannot beat Crazy Taxi. Absolutely beautiful, and that still plays brilliantly, and you can tell that it stood the test of time by the fact that they've remade it on so many mobile platforms, and it is exactly the same basically. I think they just changed the music.
Same as Jet Set Radio. That's had numerous releases recently.
Jet Set Radio. That's an absolutely beautiful game.
It's perfectly
cell shading.
Stood the test of time, and we are still loving it in its original format.
The Dreamcast stood the test of time really well. I mean, it's still got new games coming out today that are really good quality. Most of the games that you play on the Dreamcast you can go back to and say, good God, these games are just so much fun. I mean, like Ooga Booga, Alien Front Online, San Francisco Rush 2049, Bomberman Online, Cosmic Smash, Rez, you know, anything really. Hydro Thunder, Four Wheel Thunder. The games, they just transcend time because they look fine, they don't look horrible, they look gorgeous still. You play it on VGA and it looks amazing. And they're just so much fun, you know. The Dreamcast controller was great, and I really think it stood up the test of time well. Online games, some of them are still online now. You know, you've got like Quake 3, you've got the unreleased, but we've got hold of it, Half-Life, which looks really good on the Dreamcast. So yeah, I really think it's stood the test of time incredibly well compared to other consoles. No other console has the following and the intense love and adoration of the fans that the Dreamcast has. No other console can claim to have such an incredible hardcore following. I still play quite a few games for it, but I've already been over most of the games that I really love on the console, so I won't go over that again.
What can I say? I have a rather large collection of Dreamcast games which I've been buying ever since it came out. I still haven't got bored of the system. I've almost collected every game I want for it now at this point, but there's still games coming out for it, like Stormwind. So, you know, I absolutely love the Dreamcast. It's one of my all-time favourite, if not my all-time favourite console, because I'm a big fan of arcade games in general, and this system is absolutely perfect for them. But not only are they arcade perfect, the majority of the games on the system, but there's just so many of my kind of games on there. I especially love all the Capcom fighting games and all the kind of stuff that they just put on there, and some of the really quirky stuff that Sega put out at the time. So yeah, I think it's really held up. Obviously, there's some games that have aged better than others, but like a lot of the arcade games, like Virtua Tennis, Crazy Taxi, Space Channel 5, all that kind of stuff, still really holds up. And the fact that there's still like re-releases and remakes of some of these games coming out shows that there's still a big demand for just simple, fun games with really nice, you know, visuals and presentation and just simple, fun games. You know, there's plenty of it. And the Dreamcast just had it in droves, considering how short it was on the thing for.
You've only got to look at all those games that were remade last year. Clearly, people still want to play Dreamcast games. Clearly, they're still in demand. Clearly, they're still just as fantastic as they were back then.
I think the Dreamcast has really stood the test of time. Besides the graphics being amazing still and still blowing me away in games like Shenmue, the games were just definitely ahead of their time. I think the ideas and the interesting concepts they had were great, whether it be Seaman with the microphone, going onto the internet to play games with the broadband adapter, or surfing the web with that web browser they had. The Dreamcast just had some really interesting ideas. Even to this day, you see some of the ideas come through in newer consoles, like with the visual memory units, being able to play games, sort of reminiscent of like the Wii Pad on the Wii U. So I think the Dreamcast has definitely stood the test of time, still has excellent titles, and so much so that some independent companies are still making titles for it. Just shows you what kind of a fan base it really has.
Does the Dreamcast stand the test of time? Well, it doesn't take much to look at Crazy Taxi or even Shenmue to look at the fact that the graphics are still holding up today. And because of all the cult classics and hidden gems that are on the Dreamcast, I'm sure it'll stay true to true Sega fans for many years to come, even as all these new futuristic and more technologically advanced consoles come out.
Yeah, I mean, really, the gameplay is the same. It's just as good today as it was, 10 years ago, 14 years ago. And it's not something that changed. So I think the Dreamcast has really stood up. It's done well. It's actually, I think, if anything, it's gotten better with time because we have more appreciation for the fact that these games are quite good.
Yeah, you're right.
Do I think the Dreamcast has stood the test of time? What a stupid question is that? Is the fact that people are still making games for this machine not enough that it stood the test of time? This little grey box. That little grey box has got some amazing games coming out on it to this day. Example, this Rush Rally Racing. This is one hell of a fun party game. It's like Micro Machines, but freaking awesome. It's on the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast. Now, this thing has stood the test of time, and I don't think that Sega was right to end its lifespan so quickly. They could have capitalized on it by introducing more third-party publishers, and by the time 2003 and 2004 came around, when games were really getting big, they could have really capitalized on that with some amazing titles.
I think with Dreamcast games, the library is basically split almost right down the middle of which games are kind of forgettable and which ones actually stand the test of time that you can still play now and have a lot of fun playing. One game in particular that I have never ever stopped playing is probably my favorite Dreamcast game of all time, and it is the next Tetris. And it's also available on the PlayStation 1, but the Dreamcast version is the definitive version, mainly because it had an online version. Not that I was really able to play online, but just that version of Tetris is, I've never played another version of Tetris that, for me, that is better than the next Tetris.
So the fifth and final question I have is not entirely Dreamcast related, but I just had to ask, if Sega were to come out with a new console, would you buy it?
Would I buy it if they made another Dreamcast, like a Dreamcast 2, like now? Yeah, I would actually, and the main reason I would is because I would love to support a new Sega console. I always felt, I mean, Sega's got a lot of good games, but they also have a lot of crappy games, let's face it. But I always felt that Sega always did a really good job with their hardware, but their software sometimes seemed to lack in some departments, which is why I always found it really, really weird that they decided to stop making hardware and continue making the software. But yes, I think I would definitely buy the Dreamcast 2 if I came out, mainly just because it's a Dreamcast 2. And you know that hopefully the third-party support would be involved, which was one of the main reasons why the original Dreamcast kind of went downhill. And then, of course, the piracy thing and the fact that it couldn't play DVDs kind of brought it into the spiral and brought it down. but it's one of those cult followings now that the Dreamcast has. That anybody who has a Dreamcast, chances are they love it. And so yeah, I would definitely buy another Dreamcast if it came out. But until then, until that day, I will never let go of this original Dreamcast.
You know it. If Sega came out with a new console, I would jump on that thing right away, launch day. And I don't buy anything launch day.
So, if Sega were to bring out a console today, would I buy it? I would be first in the queue. I am a Sega fanboy. Yeah. I would. If
we'd
they
have
were
sleeping bags for that.
Literally sleeping bags for that one. If they were to announce one today and say the price point was 400 quid, I'd set aside that £400 for the Sega console over the Xbox One or the PS4. Yeah. That's how big a fan I am. I was gutted when Sega stopped making consoles, and I was gutted when they gave some of the license for Sonic the Hedgehog to Nintendo.
Yeah,
for me, that's sacrilege.
Yeah, ridiculous.
You were Sonic or Mario, you were Nintendo or Sega back in the day, and for them to do that, I'm gutted. But if they were to say, right, we're going to do this, we've got enough money, let's just bang out a console, I'm there.
Yeah, I'm there as well. We'll both be in the queue.
Cherry on top, mate.
We'll probably be behind PC Wizard.
Probably, yeah,
because he would have got there early. He'd probably be at the front of the queue, wouldn't he?
Well early, with one of those camping chairs with a little cup holder in.
Little stove.
Yeah, a little stove.
Cooking marshmallows.
Loves it. I would. I don't even care if it wasn't up to the next generation graphically or anything like that. As long as it was fun and had that old school, that Sega classic element, the arcade conversions.
You think how good the arcade conversions could be now?
You know they could be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Let's champion for a Dreamcast 2.
Dreamcast 2, we're in.
I'm there.
Sega making a new console. No, they're never going to do that. If they did, if they lost their damn mind, and they did, yeah, I'd support it unless it was all digital. But no, they're never going to come back. The Sega we know is gone. They are not coming back. I'm sad to say it, but it is true.
Since I just so recently got a Dreamcast, it's kind of like Sega released a new console and I did buy it. There's a lot of titles that I'm really looking forward to playing, and I don't see myself setting it aside for a while until I've had a chance to go through some of them.
Yeah, I mean, the Dreamcast does have a lot of great games on it, but you know what? Sega has just recently started releasing some games that I'm really looking forward to, such as Sonic Lost World coming out on the Wii U. So as long as they can put out that kind of caliber game on their own system, I think that would do great wonders for the gaming community in general. So if they were to release one, I'm pretty sure I would be on board.
Oh god, yes, please let there be another one. I would spend probably any amount of money to see another Sega console, just to see the next Panzer Dragoon, the next Skies of Arcadia, the next Phantasy Star Online, the next Shenmue, the next Jet Set Radio. If that were to happen, I mean, think of not only just sequels to great games that happened on the Dreamcast, but the Dreamcast was the home of dozens of wonderful new original franchises. That's something that no consoles like today, like Nintendo cannot claim that. They just rehash all the same franchises over and over. Sega was the one that went out there and said, let's just go nuts, let's just come up with some insane new ideas. Tropical Street Racer, Jet Set Radio, you know, say Phantasy Star Online. I know it was a remake of older games, but they completely rebuilt it from scratch. And Booga Booga, the list could go on for hours, but yeah, I would definitely buy another one just to see what they come up with this time around. And I really hope they do.
If Sega were to make a new console, would I buy one? I really don't know, because like I said before, I wasn't really a huge Sega fanboy. I was a Sonic fanboy. As long as the Sonic games were there, I would get them and maybe get whatever system they had. You know what? I think it would be great if Sega did ever get back to the console making business. You know, competition in the field is great. Especially is great for gamers, because now they're competing on price, they're competing on exclusives, they're competing on services. And that just makes things so much better for us, because variety is what keeps this business going. Competition is what keeps this business going. And I wouldn't mind if another company came into the field and started getting into the console race.
Would I buy another Sega console? Yes. Yes, I would.
Let me think about that for a second.
Sega's coming out with a new console? You serious?
So that's it, guys. Those are all the questions I have for this video. If you feel like answering any of these questions yourself, feel free to post a video response or a comment down below and let me know your Dreamcast memories. I really want to give a big shout out and thank you to everyone who contributed to this video. I'll put links to their channels down below. I highly recommend you go check them out. They're all awesome YouTubers with great channels. I really want to give a big happy birthday to the Dreamcast, and hopefully it will produce another 14 or 15 years of good memories. And as usual, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please comment, rate, subscribe, and thanks for watching.
I think if the Dreamcast would have included a DVD player the way the PS2 did, it might have lasted longer. It may have even ended up winning. One of the main problems with the Dreamcast, or at least what I found to be a problem, was that people were using the Utopia boot disc and playing tons and tons of copied games, and they weren't really buying anything. So in the end, the people who loved all these games ended up kind of being the downfall of the system. One of the only good things that came out of the bootlegs and the boot discs was that it's pretty easy to play Dreamcast games from other countries and other territories. There's a lot of games that only came out in Japan, especially fighting games, a lot of the King of Fighters series, a lot of the Capcom vs. NK type games, and they're excellent, and not much Japanese is really needed to play them. Or you could even buy the Japanese version of the American games, and they're just a lot cheaper. Also, some of the PAL games were PAL exclusives, like Shenmue 2, Evil Twin, and Headhunter. We may have seen them later on as different renditions or different releases, but the Dreamcast had the originals. The Dreamcast is still one of my favorite consoles ever. I think it ranks up there with me with the Sega CD, the 3DO, and the Neo Geo. The Dreamcast has a ton of accessibility, a ton of excellent arcade ports and titles, great RPGs, and they even introduced the 2K Sports series, which rivaled EA and I think did better than it, which says something unto itself. It's Vampire Mike from SegaCDUniverse.com. Be good, guys.